Allow me to share my screen. Sorry, I need to log out here. Okay, let's come back to our revision. Today we focus on L4M8, and as you know, this is one of the two CR modules of level 4. This module, like L4M1, it has 4 chapters, and in the exam you will see 4 questions. Each questions will represent a chapter. Before we start, I would like to introduce a bit about what is the difference between OR and CR exams. If you have attended other exams in level 4, you may know that our exam has a lot of questions. In level 4, it has an exam typically has 60 questions. And because of the friendliness of the number of questions, the range of topic tend to be wide, and they can ask any quarter of any corner of the study guide. On the other hand, CI exam only has 4 questions. They often narrowly focus on very few topics within that study guide or within that chapter. And normally, both L4M1 and L4M8 has some typical topic that you may know from reading the principal marker report. Sorry, my voice is pretty, I don't know why. Yesterday and the day before it, I have a fever and I have very high temperature. So my voice is a bit affected by that fever. And you may see may hear my cough. Sorry for that. Okay, let's continue. Because of exam topic focus, so we may quite narrow and focus on very few. Because of topic focus, you may narrow down and focus on very few topics that you can see from principal marker report. And I have listed the number of topics here, which is my observation from previous exams. You may also have such observation from the principal marker reports. And as you know, SIP had just changed their website, and it is quite different from the previous. It has very different appearance from the previous one. I feel that it's also very hard to use. To go to a principal marker report, you may not see it in this interface. Okay, I hate new websites very much. it also had delays. To go to the principal market report, you may find it very difficult. And I had to bookmark my that link. I had to bookmark the link. I cannot find it here. I had to bookmark the link. CPM reports. I will paste this link to the chat box. You may see that the PM report is under the page student, but if you click on student, you cannot find anything relating to it. And for revision of L4M8, click choose it and start reading each of them. Okay, I will open them all. The last PM report is from March 2022. Okay, for example, I see the report from March 2021, and you may see roughly the focus area of that question during that exam. They ask about, for example, the question number 1 asks about 5 stages of SIP procurement cycle. Question number 2 asks about supplier evaluation criteria. And probably the question is on which criteria is applicable to given scenario. And also read the rest of the report. You may find useful information such as, this is a keyword, did not include a proposal for weightings. So if you want to have higher grade, you must include not only the criteria, but also the how we evaluate those criteria, how do we evaluate the bids from suppliers. Question number 3, focus on the cost when acquiring and operating a piece of equipment. So it's not about the whole life cost, but only about the acquisition cost and operation cost. And question number 4 asks about the need to undertake ethical and sustainable sourcing. Also, if you want to get high grade, it's important to identify the action which would be taken to ensure ethical and sustainable sourcing. Also, you may have the same approach to other reports. Question number 1 on supplier management. Number 2 on express contract terms. Number 3 on disposal of materials. And number 4 on social impact of a business. That's how I insert the topic within each question here. This is just my collecting and analysis. For example, in question 1, I analyze that from March 2020. We have those topics like market analysis, early supplier involvement, tendering process, outsourcing, stages in procurement cycle, and supplier management. Question number 2 typically focus on financial ratios, model forms of contract, some express contractual terms, supplier evaluation like criteria or assessment, and supplier selection. How do we have the criteria for selection? Question number 3, it has the most narrow range of topic. Most narrow range of topic. It includes the whole life cycle costing, disposal, the hidden cost in whole life cycle costing, and developing business case for senior management. Question number 4, solely on ethical and responsible sourcing. Typically, it's on code of conduct, SIP code conduct, on fraud and bribery, KPIs for good governance and for environmental or social goals, social impact of a business, and CSR, corporate social responsibility. So that is the why topic, but in each topic they may ask different questions. For example, in market analysis, they may ask you that what will be the tool for market analysis, or they may ask you, they may give you a scenario and ask you to use the appropriate tool to assess that market. They may ask you, they may describe a market and ask you whether this market is appropriate for joining or not. Similarly, other topic also, although here I list the topic here, but it does not mean they may ask very simple about it. They may ask very creatively, creatively on each topic. And during this revision, I will have you to discover at least this topic. And if we have time, I may revisit the principal market report, the most recent one, and try to reconstruct a question from it. Okay, so I will continue from the question number 1 to question number 4, and start with the procurement cycle. As you may see, SIP procurement cycle. As you may see, SIP procurement cycle is a topic that can be found in question 1. They can ask you about the stages of procurement cycle. And my advice is that you should, actually is a must, you must learn by heart all the stages. And for facilitation, I divided the cycle into 3 phase. Phase number one, I call it pre-tendering. Include the stages from 1 to 4. In these stages, you have not contact or have not sent the formal document to the to the supplier, but you are working your best to understand the need as well as the nature of the market, so that you can have a strategy to source that product or service. Phase 2 is tendering. After researching, after discovering the need, you develop the documentation and send them to the suppliers. And if we select the tendering process, then the supplier will submit the bids or the tender, and we evaluate and try and to select the best one, the best supplier. This phase and with contract award and this phase and with post-contract negotiation and contract award to the best perform supplier. The third phase is post-contract award. In this phase, the buyer manage the contract and the supplier, and also they also manage the assets. So by subdividing the procurement cycle, I believe that you can learn by heart it a bit easier. And within CIP exam, the question in L4M8 mostly focus on mostly ask you to randomly describe some stages, or they may ask you to describe some stages in pre-contract award, or describe some stages in post-contract award. And normally, if they give you the name stage, it's a bit easier for you to describe, because all you are working as procurement, and when you see a stage name here, you may find it easier to write your idea. But sometimes they may ask you, like the questions in March 2021, they may ask you to randomly list 5 stages and give and describe those stages. So learn by heart the cycle is necessary for exam preparation. Another possible topic in question 1 is outsourcing. And mostly this question is only on advantage and disadvantage of outsourcing. It can be very easily found in the study guide, the advantage and the disadvantage of outsourcing. And please keep in mind that this question might be very easy. But they may ask you to list a given number of advantage or disadvantage, normally 3, 4, or 5. And you must have some key idea to write. And you may know that if you don't write the number of lists in full, like they ask you to give them five advantage or 5 disadvantage, but you are able to give them 3, then you may drop mark here. Then you won't gain the maximum points, and you will be your point, like in the question they have 25 points, you only get about 10 about that. Another topic in question 1 is market analysis. In this topic, they tend to ask you about the tools that may be used in to analyze a market. The study guide suggests these tools, and normally in the question, this type question may not have the scenario. So when you give them the tool, you must give them the example of how to use these tools. For example, when we talk about butterfly force, then yes, for example, if the question is what are the tools for market analysis, and suddenly you remember a tool is butterfly forces, then uh, as a rule of thumb, you say about it, then you have to describe this tool in details. First, what is it? What is it tool? Second, how it is applied to procurement and supply environment. And third, give them some example of apply this tool to your job. Example. At least for each tool, you have to write these 3 points. And only provide a bullet list of the tools does not give you any advantage in the exam, and likely will give you about 5 or 10 points for this question. So the key here is not only about remember the correct name of the tool, but also about the details of that tool, like what is it, how is it applied, and the example of applying these tools to day-to-day job. And within market analysis too, there's a topic that can be asked further. It is early supplier involvement, like outsourcing. The question tend to focus on benefits or the advantage and the disadvantage of this approach. Again, to answer this question and gain maximum points, you must give them at least what is early ESI, Then also, when is it applied in procurement? Then you may write the benefits or the risks of this approach. And after that, for example, if you are talking about the risk, then you also need to talk about how to manage that risk. For example, early supplier involvement has a risk of uh, loss of intellectual property rights. So how do we manage that risk? We can ask the supplier to sign non-disclosure agreement. And only select the well-performed and trusted supplier. We only select the supplier with very good ethical background. That's how we can manage the risk regarding intellectual property. A topic that is also very common. A topic that is very common in L4M8 exam is tendering process. And typically, they may ask you this question with the scenario and ask you whether which type of tendering process is appropriate within that scenario. For example, they may give you a scenario with an engine company who is an aircraft company who is sourcing the engine from overseas, and which type of tendering process is appropriate. The type of tendering is dependent on the number of suppliers in the market. We have, according to the study guide and also L4M4, we have typically 3 types of tendering: open, restricted, and negotiated. Of course, we use tendering when we see that the value of this project is worthy, and also we need to evaluate the tender further. So we use the tendering process. Furthermore, SIP also asks you to describe the process that you have selected. If you have selected open tendering, you must describe the stages of this process, like how do we send the invitation to tender, and what we should include in the invitation to tender. How? Then what we should include here? And which criteria that we will use to assess the tender. Then when is the deadline? Also, the contract and the specification is also attached to the invitation to tender. Then after that, what we do? Then the supplier submit their bids, and after the deadline ends, the buyer will open each of the document and assess it based on the criteria. And after that, we select the best perform one, the best one based on our assessment. In restricted, we have another stage to pre-qualify the supplier, and in negotiated rather than sending, we use negotiated tendering when we don't exactly know the conformance specification or technical specification. Then if you select this type of tendering, the scenario should suggest that the buyer is not able to produce an exact technical specification. So in negotiated tendering, we pre-qualify the supplier, then the supplier will be invited to the negotiation, and they will have the buyer to develop the solution. Actually, sometimes this process is called request for proposal. It might be more familiar to you, but it doesn't matter, and SIP often call it negotiated tendering. We move on as a topic in question 1. The final topic I want to talk in question 1 is supplier management. Regarding this topic, we might have the questions on the benefits and the risks and the tools for supplier management. Similarly, like question on outsourcing and ESI, you must also say about what is it, when it applies. You may ignore the how. Basically, at least talk about what and when before going into the benefits and the risks of supplier management. And also, they have questions on the possible tools for supplier management. The tools, if you already read the study guide, you might see that the tool is typically has something like the KPI, the SLA. Also, actually, when we talk about the tool, we talk about how do we manage the supplier, how do we manage and monitor the supplier. Besides the KPI and SLA, we also have the meeting, regular meeting, and irregular meeting. Brief on how they are performing and how they can improve. Also, we can also have audit, supplier audit. So they are the two, and also it is a question on how do we manage the supplier how do we manage the suppliers? Sorry, my voice is very bad here. Okay, so we have finished with question with the topic number 1, with question 1, all the topics within question 1. Question 2 and question 3 has more narrow range of topic. And majorly, question 2, the most common one in question 2 is the most common topic in question 2 is about financial analysis. And within this topic, they tend to ask about 3 subtopics. First, the need for analyzing supplier financial situation. Second, the risk of using a supplier with poor performance, with poor finance. And finally, they may have a question on calculating and assessing given supplier financial situation, like ask you to analyze the current ratio, quick ratio, and gearing ratio, and ask you whether we should select or ask you to analyze the situation of this supplier. So the first two topics can be found very easily within study guide. Actually, it is linked to each other. The need is have the link to the risk. If we choose supplier with poor performance, poor financial situation, then we may face the shortage, or they may come into liquidation, etc. And they may reduce the quality, or they may ask for the cash early and affect your company cash flow. The third topic is less frequently asked, but it may appear, and it asks you to calculate. Remember that in the exam, they give you a calculator tool in the top right corner of the exam of the software. So you may, like in this box, you may click here and it will appear. You don't need to worry about the calculation. It's very easy. And very basically, like they give you the total current assets is this X number. Then total current liability is Y number. Then you only need to divide X on Y. And it's very simple, like 0.32. And the question is, how do you assess this? How do you assess this number? And regarding this type question, please keep in mind that if a supplier is a new company, like they have just established and they only have like 1 year of experience, this kind of number is not telling much, because they are just a new business and they want to do what they want to work with the new customer, and they may lack of experience. But if their prospect is very promising, this current ratio is not very worry. It's not a sign of worry. But if the supplier is kind of a long established business, then it is very worrisome. Current ratio of 0.32 is very low, and they may have a risk of liquidation, or they may ask for demand money early. So just a question on financial analysis. It's not very complex, but you should analyze the scenario carefully. Also, we have two topics on the legals. First is the use of multiple contract within procurement supply, and second the use of different express terms in a contract, like outsourcing, like ESI, like supplier management. The modified contract also tend to ask the question on this topic, tend to ask about the benefits and risks. Also, you may remember that we need to describe what is it. And when we use them, then you may describe the benefit and the risk. And if you describe the risk, remember to say about how to manage the risk here. Finally, there are some questions on how to use. It is actually it should link to here. Like if you know that the risk of using modified contract is that we actually it often balance the benefits of both supplier and buyer. Then if you want to ship more benefits to your side, then you still need to edit a bit of that form of contract. And another risk is that it may has, sorry, let me remember. Another risk of using modified contract is that it does not eliminate the need to use a legal professional. Then when we use this modified contract, we still need to seek advice from the lawyer, from the socializer. Also, regarding modified contract, you should also say about typical form contract, like NEC, or FDIC, sorry, FIDIC, or IMAC, triple E. There's a lot of them. Even International Chamber of Commerce also publish some kind of form contract on their website, and SIP also provides some example of these forms. Another topic in legal aspect is the use of different express terms within contract. In the study guide, they describe these terms. Like we have the term on liability. Actually, to avoid confusion, the liability actually I need to explain this to you. Liability is a word for second obligation. It's a word for second obligation. What is second obligation? You know that within contract we have the contract establish the obligations for the buyer and the supplier, and the obligation that may have the direct effect from the contract is the primary. For example, like the supplier is obliged to deliver the goods to your premise. That's an that's a primary obligation. But if they fail to do that obligation, then they incur a second obligation. It called secondary obligation. And in many contracts, it is called liability. And also, any cap on liability is equal to the cap on secondary obligation. This phase is determined within a case law in England, and is a rule now. So remember that a term on liability is actually a term on secondary obligation, or on the obligation that imposed on the breach party in case that they breach that term. Also, they may ask you the question on indemnity clause or exclusion clause or insurance clause. To solve this type of question, first I suggest you to list some key points here. For example, when we talk about indemnity, we talk about what is it? What is indemnity? Indemnity is a promise from a party to another to hold them harmless, or to indemnify, or to compensate the other party from any loss, or from any damage, or from anything or from any harms that arising from certain events. The range of indemnity or the depend totally on the negotiation between the parties. We talk about what is indemnity. We talk about how it is used, under which circumstance it should be used, and how do we write it? How can we identify it within the contract, and how it have the procurement. So a lot of questions how it has the procurement. Similarly, you may answer the rest of the terms in this question, like what is insurance, how it should be used in the contract, and how it helps the procurement. Also, how it is written. The question regarding legal aspects, I feel that they are very common in L4M8 exams in question 2, and because it has very narrow focus, so you may try your best to remember them and maximize your points here. Finally, we talk about in chapter 2, we talk about supplier selection and evaluation. I have listed the common topic here, including the benefits, the criteria for assessing, and the method for assessing. And when we write the answer for this type question, first, always we should say about what it is, and what is position within procurement cycle. Then we can talk about the benefits. But the question may also the criteria, and you may list based on competency. You may list the criteria based on competency. And also we also to consider the methods of supplier selection and evaluation. We have majorly we have two methods. First one is the best price method, which is we only select the lowest price bids for tender, best price. And second, we have weighted score. Using weighted score, we give weight, we give percentage to certain criteria and assess the criteria, assess the bids based on the criteria and the weight. So even when the question is only about the criteria, don't forget to talk about the methods. And even when the question is only about the benefits, you should also talk about how we maximize that benefits, that about what method that we should use to evaluate and select the suppliers. The third chapter focuses solely on whole life cycle costing. And basically, most exam, especially the exam that from 2019 from 2020, the question is on the how on the elements of whole life cycle costing. That in those questions you need to list all of the factors, all of the elements, and analyze them. But recently, the question kind of different. They don't simply ask about the elements. The type of question on elements is too easy for every student. So they tend to ask different questions on this topic, like decommissioning and disposal process. What is the process here? Here I list the four stages that is suggest from study guide. We have preparation, dismantling, processing, and disposal. And within each process, within each stage, we say about what procurement do, what tasks need to be performed, what is the outcome, who is in charge of the task. And if you have more time, you may write about risk and risk management. For example, in preparation stage, we actually just need to plan for the disposal, how to safely dispose this type of assets. Here we only in this stage we only plan and assign the task to other stakeholders. Then in dismantling, the team try to disassemble and collect the harmful substance. In processing, we process the harmful substance and sell off the rest of the machine, for example. And finally, disposal, we the project come to an end, and we process the rest of the machine or the assets, and meeting on lesson learned of the past project. You should revisit these stages in the study guide to review. And recently, the question may be on the engagement with other stakeholders, like with senior management and with other internal stakeholders on disposal or a whole life cycle costing or whole life cycle management. To communicate with senior management, we often use a document called business case. And the question here tend to focus on the need to write business case. Why do we need to write this type case? And also the content of business case. The business case is actually a document, and its purpose is to communicate the needs of a project to the senior management. It should have wider use of that. Business case also lists the option that the senior management can select from. And the business case is a way to communicate the needs and try it aimed at to convince the senior management to follow this project. Actually, the senior management still has the decision, still has the right to decide whether they should follow this project or not. But in procurement context, the procurement professional or the buyer should try his best or her best to convince the senior management to approve the project. Regarding other internal stakeholder, we have the engagement in the form of cross-functional team and team development. Actually, this type of question has not yet appeared in the exam. I only see that there's a question on business case, but this type of question is kind of very rare. I only see it once. Basically, most questions still focus on whole life cycle costing and the elements of WLC. Also, it may ask you as topic like the hidden costs within whole life cycle costing, like the research or the hidden cost in whole life cycle, like the research or the maintenance or the installation or insurance, etc. And sometimes they ask you the elements or the specific element within whole life cycle costing, like the total cost of acquisition. So question number 3 has very limited range of topic. And because of that shallow, I think that it is the best question that you may maximize your point. It only has about 2 or 3 topics here, and it is very easy to remember and to learn if you are working as a procurement. Finally, we move to the final question and final chapter. Actually, I feel that chapter 4 is kind of has the lowest grade here. I mean that most student does not perform well in question 4. Basically, it has very wide range of topics, and it has a lot of surprise when they come to the exam. In the early exam in 2019 and 2020, SIP tended to ask about the code conduct, the error that is covered by the code conduct. Here I list 5 errors that the 5 errors that is covered by SIP code conduct, and you need to learn by heart all of them, at least all of them. Actually, you don't need to write the exact wording of the exam, sorry, of the code of conduct of these errors, but try to remember the keyword. The keyword here is to protect the standing of the profession, protect the standing of procurement. The keyword of number 2 is highest standard of integrity. Actually, you only need to remember the integrity. Number 3, eradication of unethical business practice. Number 4, the proficiency and status of the profession. And number 5, full compliance. So at least try to remember these keywords. Recently, they tend to not ask about this error, but in early exams in 2019 and 2020, it appears very often. And don't need to don't be too complacent to this type question. You still need to learn it, and it may appear in the exam. A topic that is rarely appear in the exam is about fraud, bribery, and corruption. The type question here tend to focus on the impact and the prevention of the practice. About the impact, we may see the impact on the operational performance, on the trust between the stakeholders, on legal implication, like we may face costly litigation, and the financial impact, like we may lose billions of dollars on fraud or bribery. And also, even when the question is on the impact, you also need to say about the method of prevention of this practice or this man practice. A topic here I note as CSR actually. I need to write here that I need to write here the impact of a business. I still remember a student said that he has a question on number 4, and the question gives gave a scenario, and in that scenario, the business is doing the positive impact on the community. And the question is, how can it make further impact? How can that business make further impact on the society and the environment performance? And actually, it depends on the given scenario. But I may give you some idea on the increase the impact of business on the social and environmental criteria. Like you may, the business may write some apprentice program, may adopt some apprentice program, which you recruit and train the young professional to the workforce. Or you may also do charity. Besides this, we may have charity. We may have donation to other funds that have positive impact. You may increase the employment of women and other and disabled people. I give you some idea to write the exam. You may have another idea. That's wonderful. Regarding environmental, we may adopt some practice, reduce we may have some practice like reduce the emission or reduce the waste or recycle the material. Or plant more tree, or reduce the use of plastic. Yeah, a lot of idea here. That's some ideas for you to write the suggestion, to write the suggested action that may increase the impact of our business. Also, there are questions on the KPIs on social and environmental aspect. Here, I also give you some example of such KPIs. They often ask you to give 3 or 5. I suggest here only 3 KPIs for social and 3 KPI for environmental. KPIs, this KPI will be applied to a given supplier who is monitor the social and environmental performance. For example, we may have KPI on minimum wage, the percentage of the workforce that is paid minimum wage. Or you may have KPI on the percentage of women, on the total number of employees within that business, or number of apprentices, on the total number of workforce. Or you may have the number of activity, number of charity activity within the year of that business. And when we talk about KPI, you should say about how it is calculated, how it is measured. For example, when we say about the KPI on pollution. We say about the tons, for example, the tons of waste or the tons of the total tonnage of waste. How many tons of waste that supplier emit to the environment in a year or in a month. If they surpass the threshold, then their performance should be reviewed, and or you may terminate the contract. Or if their performance is good, then you may have some encouragement to the good performer, and you may encourage them to improve further their performance further. Again, here are some of my idea or some of my suggestions to your answer to this type question. Okay, that's all I can suggest you from my experience with L4M8, and it's 5:12 in my time or 10:12 in GMT time. We may visit some only one recent principal market report and try to reconstruct how to answer the question here, those questions. Okay, for example, I am reviewing the March 2022 exam on L4M8, and we start to see the question here. The first question, you read here, the keyword here is early supplier involvement. Early supplier involvement. And the first sentence does not give us much information. We continue with the second and the rest of the paragraph. From this paragraph, we learn that this type of question has scenario. It has scenario, and it also has the word explain. So the question tend to be about explain early supplier involvement, but explain what aspect of early supplier involvement. We can narrow down the error and the common word, but we don't exactly know what the question look like. So regarding this type of question, we need to learn. Yes, I see a rising hand from Mohammed. Can you turn on your macro and speak to me?
Yes, Daniel, how are you?
Quite bad. I still has very sore throat.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Of course.
Okay, so this question, because I have taken this exam before for March 2022, but unfortunately I did not pass it. But it was regarding the advantage and disadvantage of the early supplier involvement.
Okay, so it still overlap on my revision here.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so how did you answer this type of question?
Actually, I mentioned yes, some three. It was asking for 3 advantage and 3 disadvantage, or 2 and 3, something like this, and to relate it to some scenario. But yes, I answered this one fine as far as I remember.
Okay, so this type of question quite simple. It has scenario and asks you to explain about the advantage and disadvantage of ESI.
Yes.
Okay. So I believe that with anyone who studies the study guide, who read the study guide, or take the exam in L4M8 will perform well in this type of question. But remember that we should not run directly into the question. We should have an opening paragraph, and you explain briefly what ESI is, and when it should be used, like when we need to develop new product or something like that, or we need to identify new solution to a problem that the buyer alone cannot identify, cannot solve. Okay, so this type of question is not very complex and fall into my revision. Question number 2, actually I have not mentioned it within my revision. It's about contract management. Mohammed? Mohammed?
Yes, Daniel, yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. You have any idea on this question?
This one was also a scenario or case study, and
Yeah.
it was asking for the supplier management.
Okay. Yeah. So how did you perform?
Yeah, I put some points.
Yes.
I mentioned some points for the post-contract management and supplier management.
Yeah. So as I understand, this question focus on the tools and how do we maximize the effects of contract management.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Post-contract management.
Yes. If you say about post-contract award, it actually not quite right, because you know that post-contract award contains the stage 10 to 13, and yes, of course, contract management fall into the post-contract award phase, but it is only a task here. It only a task here within the post-contract award, and this question, based on my experience, I believe that it focuses on the tools of contract management, like how do we use KPI, SLA, how do we monitor the performance of the supplier?
Yes. Yes, right.
Okay. Okay. Let's continue with question number 3. Again, it's about whole life asset management cost. It's about the cost. It's about the management cost rather than the elements of whole life asset costing. So it's a bit different from a normal question. So it's about management cost rather than we talk about like total cost of acquisition or the cost for operation, etc. We say about the management cost like researching, or the cost for the wages for procurement, or the wages for other department when they do some research on the totalized costing. And the cost also we also we need to take into account the cost of purchasing the software for management and maintain that software. But I still don't understand what problem they're asking here. This question comes with a scenario. This question comes with a scenario, and they may give you some problem. Actually, they may in a question with scenario, we may directly see the problems. And this type of question is asking for your problem solving skill. So regarding problem solving, I come back to my slide. Regarding problem solving, we don't have time to full problem solving approach, but we may see some approach here, like we identify the problem. What's the problem is given in a scenario? Then we identify the root of the problem. The scenario may give you the root. Then finally, we suggest some options to solve the problem. For example, the problem in this scenario may be that the team does not have the expertise to manage to apply the whole life asset management. Then the problem is regarding the personal. They don't have the skill. So the root problem is that they are not trained. They have not been trained on this topic, or this skill, or this area. Then the solution can be like hire some consultant or hire some training or invest on training or invest on management software. And training. Depending on the specific problem, we may have different approach. And this is just one of my guess and one of my example on problem solving when we see a problem within a scenario. You may see the what the principal market report may suggest. The second element require practical application, and the candidate will require to provide and explain solution to the problem. So we may adopt my 3 steps here. Identify the problem, identify the root, and suggest some option to solve problem, like you eliminate the root, or you try to adapt to the situation. For example, we may have the problem in COVID-19. We have supply disruption. We cannot eliminate COVID-19 right now, but we can adapt to situation, like we place the order early, or invest more in the supplier relationship. That is adapting. Sometimes we may eliminate the root, like invest on training and improve the skill of the personnel, the skill of the employee on whole life cycle management, for example. Okay, we move on question 4. So first is it seems that this is a very popular topic. Okay, so the main focus is ethical sourcing solution. How do we have think about the solution for ethical sourcing? Like how do we source the supplier with ethical and responsible background, or with strong ethical background? How do we source? Basically, we source them based on the criteria for assessment for evaluation. Can be that. So again, this question requires practical application and not about listing the theory. And they say that the student tend to provide very brief response, so they get very they are not able to maximize the marks, the points here. So the question tend to be on the ethical sourcing solution, like how do we select the supplier with strong ethical background. So we need to it's about sourcing, so we need to focus on the pre-contract award in procurement cycle from stage 1 to stage 9, and from within each stage you may suggest the solution. Like in defining the needs, we may define some requirement on ethical and responsible sourcing, and we may analyze the market to see whether the domestic supply market has enough number of suppliers to provide the service with ethics. Then in developing the documentation, we may develop the criteria and the KPIs for ethical and responsible. Also, along this line, we need to avoid corruption and conflict of interest. Okay, so that's my quick interpretation of the most recent principal market report in March 2022. Now it's the time for questions, and I will try my best to answer all your concerns. If you have any question, please turn on your micro or type in the chat. Okay, hello Ivan. Can you turn on the macro and ask me?
Yeah. Hi, Daniel. Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
I just wonder. I still didn't read the study for L4M8.
Yes.
I just wonder, is it sufficient to read only the study guide to be able to answer all these questions we just went through, or we have to go back and of course it's better if we consult our previous study guides of other modules, but my question is, if I concentrate only on the study guide of L4M8, would I be able to answer the questions as they should be answered, as you are instructing us?
Yeah. Thank you for your question, and it's a very interesting question. Actually, I feel that unlike other modules, there are not much of L4M8. There are not many questions in the exam. For L4M8, is asking you not from the study guide, and regarding, so it's the reason that I can safely speak to you that you may only read the study guide of L4M8 and still pass the exam. it kind of very sufficient to only study in L4M8, because I may see that unlike L4M1, if you attend my revision on L4M1, you may see that some question like the difference between direct and indirect expense, or the difference between procurement in manufacturing and in retail does not appear in the study guide. But in the format, all of the topic we see here, I list here, and even the question in the most recent in March 2022, you still see that all of these errors are described, even briefly are described in the study guide. And but keep in mind that the study guide only provide very brief explanation of the topic of this topic. Like, for example, on effective contract management, they only provide some kind of bullet points. And your job is to apply your day-to-day experience, apply your job's experience to the answer. Like, you must give them more detailed answer. They also provide that the student tend to provide brief response. This should be this should be avoided. This should be avoided. And to maximize the point, learning from study guide is necessary, but it only provides you some very brief answer to the question. You need to write the question in detail, so you need to apply your experience and apply my method here. Like, if they ask you something, you should say that what is how it is used, or how it is applied, or how it is written, or how it is how it have the procurement, and give them the example. Don't provide only brief response.
And the in the study of L4M8, we should also have use knowledge of these modules. As far as have I understood you right or not?
Sorry, your voice is very breaking. Can you say again? It's about the connection of
sorry. So the study book for L4M8, only the brief explanation, but if we want to maximize our points, and if we want to answer the questions in more details, we will have to go back and I mean, use our knowledge from previous modules as well.
Yes, correct. That should be done. And but if you don't want to visit, it's okay. But try to remember the framework here. It called, actually this framework is called 7H and 7W and 1H. Like, you put the question on your own answer. Like, when you ask about contract management, you should ask yourself what is it, and when it is used, etc. Every question about that, you need to examine every aspect. And normally it's very intuitive for procurement professionals, so don't worry about revisiting. But actually, if you revisit the previous study guides, I believe that your answer will be in depth, very detailed.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks all.
Oh, okay. Is there any other questions? Hello. Is there any other questions?
Daniel, I have one question, please.
Yes, please.
Yeah, in the whole life management cost, if we have a machine and this machine is using raw materials,
Yes.
these materials is considered as operating cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Is it part of the operating cost of the whole life of the whole life costing of the machine?
No. Yeah. Actually, I need to draw an example here. Hold on, costing. Yeah. Okay, I put it here. Hold on, costing. So we talk about a machine that we use in manufacturing, right? So in manufacturing, we convert the raw material to the finished product. Then the raw material to finished product to finished product, the raw material is a direct cost. So regarding how like costing, it's not kind of the cost of the machine. When we say about how like costing or the operating cost, the operating costs tend to cover the following, like the wages for operator, like we need an engineer or a professional operator to run that machine. Then we say about the consumable for that machine, like the lubricant or the utility or the energy, like diesel or gasoline. Or electricity, all these costs.
Okay, so these raw materials is not considered as part of the
Operating cost, yes.
Yeah,
It is the direct cost for the finished product, and it has no relationship to the actually it has very limited relationship to the machine.
Okay, clear.
Yeah. Is there any other question? So if you don't have further question, I think that I can finish my revision here. The exam for L4M8 will happen next week. I hope that all of you will have successful exam in July and also in November.
Danny, sorry.
Hello?
I wanted to find out the difference between whole life asset management cost and whole life costing.
Okay, so just my guess. Actually, I need to just my guess about the question in March 2022. It's about not only about the elements of whole life cycle costing, but whole life asset management cost. You should revisit the study guide. Let me open my study guide. Please wait a few minutes.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm still reviewing. Okay, I think I have the answer to your concern, Victoria. If you open the page, open the book page 134 and onward. Yes, actually onward. I don't remember when it ends. Where it ends. They use the term whole life cycle management and describe this term as the process to identify and manage the cost. Whole life asset management is a process of evaluating the total price and all associated costs of a product to make an informed decision. That definition from page 133. And the process has 8 elements in page 135. And you may see that it is much overlap with the element of whole life cycle costing. So I believe that whole life asset management cost is still actually is still mentioning the elements of the process, like how do we identify the needs, how much cost it is to for us to procure the assets, and how much it costs to design or construct the assets. So largely it overlap with whole life cycle costing. And the problem with the L4M8, the problem with L4M8 match exam 2002 is that it is about the scenario with a problem and ask the student to solve that problem. The first part, I think that's still about describe the element of whole life asset management. So regarding the question, Victoria, it is about still about the elements of whole life assets costing. Thank you for the question. I still need to review and make the exact answer to your concerns. Okay, I hope my answer satisfied you, and I think that the revision should end here. You will be sent. I will upload this recording to YouTube and send the link to you. Thank you for attending, and see you in the next revision.